Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. Fight of the year. Could be. At 160 pounds, man. Who's making a huge mistake? Claressa Shields or Kaye Scott? Well, I'll tell you what, man. Episode 4. Thanks for joining me again. And this episode, we're going to talk about Kaye Scott's road to the championship. Because she didn't have a regular journey. Now, let's do this, right? Because the thumbnail, let me stretch it out. There we go. Now we can see the two ladies. Let me tell you something. When it comes to Kaye Scott, this is a journey that nobody saw coming. She didn't see it coming. The people in Australia didn't see it coming. Things just kind of happened. Now, when people talk about the August 15th showdown between Claressa Shields and Kaye Scott, much of the attention naturally goes to you-know-who. Big Goat Mrs. Man, Please. She's a two-time gold medalist, done the business in boxing. I mean, it doesn't make sense mentioning all of her accolades, you know what I mean? If you follow boxing, women's boxing, you know who Claressa Shields is. One of the most recognizable names. But see, every championship fight has two stories. And Kaye Scott's story is unlike almost anyone else's in boxing. Well, you had someone like Claressa building her reputation over dozens of international tournaments and professional title fights. For Kaye Scott, Miss Aussie, oi, 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 it took a much longer road, man. One built on patience, persistence, and refusing to quit on a dream that many believe had passed her by. Only been boxing 3 years, age 42. No one expected her to be in this position she's in now, especially fighting Claressa Shields. It's just a totally different beginning. She was born in Sydney, Australia in 1984. Unlike many elite fighters who began boxing as children, for Kaye Scott, her path developed later, during a period when only opportunities for female boxers were limited in Australia. You see, women's boxing in New South Wales had only recently begun receiving official recognition, and Scott participated in the state's first sanctioned female exhibition bout in 2009. That's a big deal. She wasn't entering a well-established system. She was helping build one. This is why people need to put respect on her name. You know, boxing wasn't popular for women. Today's female fighters benefit from television deals, world title opportunities, and increasing media attention. So that wasn't the case when Scott was coming through the ranks. Women's boxing received very little coverage. Many amateur tournaments offered limited exposure. Financial rewards were almost non-existent, and for many female athletes, boxing was driven by passion, not paychecks. You think I'm joking? Ask Amanda Serrano about the kind of money she was getting paid when she was boxing early in her career. So Kaye Scott trained because she loved competition, not because there was fame waiting at the end. Now, she did build an amateur foundation. She talks about it. The amateur system teaches fundamentals: footwork, balance, timing, distance, punch selection, ring awareness. And Kaye Scott spent years sharpening those skills before even thinking about the professional ranks. Unlike fighters who rush into professional boxing, she invested heavily in learning the sport. This is why many feel if she can survive the early rounds against Claressa Shields, she has a great chance on going on to make it competitive and possibly getting the biggest upset in boxing history. But that foundation would later become one of her biggest strengths. Now, as far as testing herself, she's tested herself internationally. You know, she spent a long time on the amateur circuit, and while on the amateur circuit, it exposed Scott to elite competition from around the world. Every tournament meant adapting to different styles. People forget about this. She fought European boxers, Asian technicians, aggressive pressure fighters, counterpunchers, southpaws, and every opponent forced another adjustment. Every tournament became another lesson. Now, one thing people don't know is she does have some Commonwealth game experience. And one of her biggest amateur opportunities came at the 2014 Commonwealth Games, where she competed at middleweight. Although her tournament ended in the quarterfinals against Wales' Lauren Price, who went on to become a gold medalist, the experience exposed her to world-class competition and highlighted areas of growth. Now, for those who are saying that name Lauren Price sounds familiar, well, Claressa's fighting Kaye Scott And after Kaye Scott, if she beats her, she wants to fight Lauren Price, who fights at 147, but who's supposed to come to 160. But now Claressa's going up to back to 175. But it's interesting knowing that Kaye Scott lost to Lauren Price and that Claressa was looking to fight Kaye Scott and then Lauren Price next. So that's an interesting point that I wanted to make. Now, great athletes don't allow losses to define them, and that's not what Kaye Scott did. She didn't let that loss define her. If anything, she allowed the loss to educate her. Now, she did get to the World Championship and won a silver medal. Now, this was just, I think, 2 years later. Yep, came one of the most defining moments of her amateur career at the 2016 AIBA. They call it the ABAs, right? But at the AIBA Women's World Championships, Scott moved up to light heavyweight and captured the silver medal, advancing all the way to the championship bout before failing to China's Yang Zhilo. Now, I probably mispronounced that last name. But for many athletes, a silver medal might feel disappointing. For Scott, it proved something important, that she belonged among the world's elite amateurs. Once you medal, that's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody medals. So there has to be something special about Kaye Scott. Now, as far as her experience over the hype, unlike some prospects who become famous before turning pro, Scott quietly accumulated experience. She wasn't constantly making headlines. She wasn't receiving massive promotional campaigns. Instead, she continued improving. That slower path meant she entered pro boxing with maturity and deep understanding of the sport. And she turned later than most. And this is one of the most unusual aspects about Scott's career, is when she turned pro. She made a pro debut in November of 2023, nearly 2 decades after beginning her amateur journey. Now that shit sounds crazy to all of us, but there's a reason for it. You see, in modern boxing, champions turn pro in their late teens or early 20s, but Kaye Scott chose a different route. Some questioned whether she had started too late. Others believed that her years of amateur experience would offset the lack of professional rounds. But only time would answer those questions. And what she proved that age isn't everything. Boxing history shows that age alone doesn't determine success. Experience matters, discipline matters, conditioning, which is going to play a key role in her if she gets a win against Claressa. Conditioning matters, ring IQ matters. And Scott entered the pro ranks without the wear and tear that often comes from dozens of brutal pro wars. She relied on technique, patience, timing, and smart decision-making. Those qualities can remain effective even after fighters get old. We've seen it. Bernard Hopkins, George Foreman, Antonio Tarver, James Toney. So the hunger was still there, although she turned pro 20 years later. And a lot of athletes lose motivation after really long amateur careers. Scott didn't. She still wanted to become a world champion. She still believed her best boxing was ahead of her. And that hunger would fuel the next chapter of her career. Instead of treating pro boxing as a retirement tour, she approached it as a fresh beginning. You see, when it comes to somebody like Scott, unlike the young prospects, she wasn't chasing potential. She was chasing opportunity. Every fight mattered because time is precious in pro sports. There would be no 5-year rebuilding process, no slow climb through the rankings, no bunch of tune-up fights. She needed to maximize every opportunity. That urgency gave her a career that had unique intensity. The amateur chapter had prepared Kaye Scott technically. Now she had to prove those skills translated into the pro game. And that next stage would see her win regional titles. She suffered setbacks. She's 5-1-1, 1 loss, 1 draw, 5 wins. No knockouts, though. But she was able to bounce back after a loss and eventually fight for the biggest prizes in women's boxing. So her climb wasn't fast, it wasn't glamorous, but it was relentless. Now, I'm going to talk about her going from underdog to unified champion, but I'm going to do that in the next part to episode 4. I got something to go do right now, but I will continue this because we got to get through all of this. I got 30 episodes. This is part 1 of episode 4. The next couple parts of this episode will be coming very soon. Don't sleep on Kaye Scott, folks. The more I look into this woman, the more I think she has a chance. Am I saying she's going to win? No. But does she have a chance? Yes. Keep cool. I'm in the breeze.